Floods. You've heard of them. But I bet you haven't heard of this one. Well, no worries. Today, Anya and I are going to teach you all about Edmonton's Great Flood of 1915.
If you didn't know, Megan and I are born and raised Edmontonians. Edmonton is Alberta's capital city, and it's the largest northernmost city in North America, with a population of over 1 million people.
Edmonton's main source of freshwater comes from the curving, meandering North Saskatchewan River. The river has its headwaters in the Rocky Mountains and flows all the way down the prairies to get here.
Since Edmonton's very conception, it's had close ties with the river valley.
Indigenous peoples were the first stewards of the valley, with archaeological evidence of camps along the river dating back as far as 10,000 years.
When European settlers arrived in the 17th century, they established Fort Edmonton on the river's edge.
But has the city's relationship with the river changed since then?
If so, why?
And how?
In this video, we'll show you what Edmonton looked like before the flood, what happened during the flood, and its impact on the city.
But in order to do that, we're going to have to take a little trip down memory lane. Come on!
Although the river valley seems pretty empty these days, it used to be a bustling hub of industrial activity.
Lumberyards, brickyards, sawmills, cigar factories, meatpacking plants, and distilleries had their processing plants up and down the floodplain.
It was a pretty great place to set up shop, with fuel sources such as wood and coal readily available nearby.
And since floodplains are naturally quite flat, it was easier to build on since they didn't have to level off the land first.
There was also substantial residential development at this time along the banks of the river.
As industry flourished in the valley, residential neighborhoods consisting mostly of cottages and small houses sprung up around it.
Like any river, the North Saskatchewan has flooded consistently through its history. However, none of the floods prior to 1915 did a lot of material damage.
And anyways, it was 1915. People had other things on their minds. You know.
In 1910, city planners were a little bit conflicted on how to use the river valley. One of the more controversial ideas comes from Alexander Potter in 1910, where he suggested that the river valley be used as a dumping place for stable manure and street refuse.
And in contrast, in 1907, world-famous landscape architect Frederick Todd argued that the river valley should be used for recreational purposes through the creation of parks. He emphasized the importance of setting aside recreational space to enjoy the peaceful bounty of nature in order to improve the quality of lives of city residents.
But naturally, some people argued for continued industrial development in the valley.
Hello? My God, Edmonton, look out! The river's up 20 feet and still jumping. My God. This was the message that John Walter received on June 27th, 1915 from Rocky Mountain House. It was the city's first warning that a flood was coming. Heavy rains over the past couple of days had transformed the river into a raging torrent, and the water was rising quickly.
At 6 a.m., just 4 hours after this, the river was rising at a rate of 1 foot per hour. The police and fire department issued a flood warning and prepared for evacuation.
By 6 p.m. on the same day, the water had risen over the banks and started to creep into the homes near the river.
Eventually, the current was so strong that city officials were worried about the structural integrity of the low-level bridge, which you can see right behind me here. Debris was washing down the river and hitting the bridge for hours. So, city officials decided to place a steam engine on the bridge to weigh it down to prevent the bridge from actually washing away.
I'm under a bridge right now, and not because I'm a troll about to ask you a riddle. I'm here to show you something pretty cool. At the peak of the flood, the river's waters rose to over 42 feet, or 13 meters, above the low water level. That's all the way up here.
For reference, the water level today is all the way down there.
The flood of 1915 was the worst flood in Edmonton's history. 2,000 people were displaced from their homes, 50 buildings were washed away completely, and over 700 homes were submerged.
But the industries that had already established themselves in the valley were the most impacted by the flood. The John Walter sawmill was completely destroyed.
Other large companies, such as the Walterdale Tannery, the Edmonton Lumber Company, and Pollard's Brickyard, never financially recovered from the losses they sustained during the flood.
The economic damage from the flood was exacerbated by the fact that Edmonton had experienced a bad period of economic depression in the years prior.
The flood happened during a period of Edmonton's history where there were conflicting views on how to develop the river valley. Because of this, the flood strongly shaped the ways that both Edmonton residents and the city viewed the river valley in the future.
After the flood, industrial and residential development within the valley slowed down because of the disastrous impacts the flood had on pre-existing infrastructure.
The fear of incurring even more damage from future floods paved the way for the river valley we know today, a place mainly used for recreation.
The industrial exodus from the river valley post-flood allowed the valley to flourish into a natural asset rather than a place for development.
Edmontonians prioritizing nature over development continued into the 1960s when the city laid out a plan for a metropolitan freeway system that would see the Capilano, Mill Creek, and McKinnon Ravine, where I am right now, paved in the same way that Grote Road is today.
However, concerned citizen groups like the Save Our Parks Association formed in protest of the plan, arguing that the undeveloped valley was necessary to provide younger generations with recreation and character-building zones. Clearly, the river valley has become an important recreational resource for Edmontonians.
And the Great Flood of 1915 played a large role in shaping the valley as a recreational asset rather than an industrial one. Today, the city still takes precautions in regards to flooding. In a 2021 study from the University of Waterloo, Edmonton ranked number 1 out of 16 major Canadian cities in regards to flood mitigation. So in a lot of ways, the flood of 1915 is the reason that you can walk,
Run, canoe,
and create memories in the 22 city parks along the river. Wow, those were some beautiful top hats. But what did we even learn today, Anya?
Well, Megan, today we learned that Edmonton's flood of 19 had some pretty long-term effects on the city, some of them for the better. For example, we learned that Edmontonians prioritize the conservation of the natural beauty and the natural wonder of the river valley over development.
So true. And although this is a rebuilding success story, climate change is impacting the nature of flooding globally. Unpredictable weather patterns are leading to an increase in both the magnitude and intensity of floods worldwide, resulting in billions of dollars in economic damage every year.
Taking precautions with city planning is a super important way to limit negative economic impacts and the displacement of thousands of people.
But that's a story for the next video. Thanks for watching today. Until next time.